yeah? A combination between the belief into the Avatamsaka Sutra and into the vows of Amitabha, yeah, in the 48, 6 to 8 is how much? 48, yeah. 48 vows of Amitabha Sutra. So that is something which we would should be paying some attention to. Buddhism was really regulated. We have started discussing this yesterday a little bit. Now I have just a few of those pictures just to demonstrate that. The way Buddhism was organized in Xixia, yeah, it's a very big issue, yeah. The so-called new laws, I do not have a picture of that now, mentions over 100 of various Buddhist communities in Xixia for the early 13th century, for the late 12th, early 13th century. Tianzan Luli, the one from here, is from the 60s of the 12th century, so it's kind of a little bit earlier than that. But we do not have Buddhist communities here, but we have other things. For example, there existed I wouldn't call it an opposition, but at least there was certain discrimination between the Buddhist communities which were speaking Tangut and Tibetan languages, that was purely linguistic, and the Buddhist communities which spoke Chinese. Now, each one of the communities had a specific list of the Buddhist texts which they were supposed to master. These two lists, they partially overlap. I have that here on page 7. There's that translation, well, not translation, but a paraphrase here. Slow Code of Buddhism. The ones which we can actually see, yeah, which texts they were supposed to master, which ones they were supposed to know nicely. I mean, partially those overlap, partially don't. But what we really find out here is that those texts, they are all, in one way or another, concerned with the nation, with the issues of state protection. This is all the so-called 胡国, yeah, 胡国思想, 胡国信仰, the belief into the protection of the state. From the list of the text, it's actually quite clear. The one text which was important in that, but not listed in this entry, was the Sutra of the Golden Light, yeah, Suvarna Praprasa, Jingguang Mingjin. But this one was, although it's not in the code, but it was considered a particularly powerful tool of protecting the state, because shortly before the second Mongol raid on Xixia, not the first but the second, the new translation of Sutra of the Golden Light was authorized, so that to keep Mongols away from Xi Qingfu, from Yichuan. But unfortunately that didn't work out. Or maybe it did, but in a different way. All right? So that's more or less how that is. Now, if we continue just a little bit further, yeah, then again, this is the preface to the 5 sounds. We have discussed this yesterday, it doesn't matter. Now then we got here. Another thing is something also which I think is correct, but also needs to be proven or discussed in more detail. That is to say that we can suspect that there was this, there is no doubt, sorry, that there was this belief on the state protection among the Tanguts, and they were really concerned with that. But on the other hand, there also was probably a specific Buddhist cult related to the imperial family per se. And this was the cult of Maitreya. That is what makes us think so. It's actually very simple, because what we have, I mean, what is the origin of most of the Buddhist texts which we have? All those nicely printed Buddhist sutras, both in Chinese or in Tangut. basically, there were, during the course of the Tangut history, there were several very big nationwide Dharma assemblies. Tens of thousands of texts were published and distributed among the faithful, for their actions. One was commemorating the 50 years of enthronement of Emperor Renzong, and the other one, from which we have clear indications, was shortly after his death, authorized by his widow, Empress Dowager Lo. So this is more or less how that happened. Now, from other texts as well, we can see that the publications of the Maitreya Sutra, they had specific votive inscriptions or specific benefactions for the sake of the imperial family. The problem, however, is that the Maitreya Sutras, for example, specifically the Maitreya's ascent to the Tushita heaven, these texts associated with Maitreya, they were not included into the list of the mandatory texts from the Kenshin Local. They were not there. Although those texts definitely enjoyed very high prestige and broad circulation. So this kind of leads us to a suspicion that it was probably something limited to the imperial worship. Again, it's kind of hard to prove. I personally believe that that was really so, and I guess that this evidence, I mean, those textual things which we have here, they're kind of straightforward, and they're indicative of those. But on the other hand, I think we never see a straightforward indication saying that we, Tangut Weimin imperial family, we firmly believe that we will be reborn in the lotus throne of Maitreya, whereas our citizens will not. Something like this. We haven't seen that. But, well, hopefully, one day, who knows. Okay, so this is one thing. Now, finally, well, last but not least, I guess, we get back to something which causes great admiration from the scholars. That's the Tangut Buddhist texts from a variety of subject matters. I have displayed this slide yesterday, actually. You might remember. This is again from the local, from the Tangut local. Basically, what does it say? The text says that if someone is desiring to become an important member of the Buddhist clergy, to become a fanzang, an abbot of a monastery, or somebody who would like to advance in the system of those offices of virtue, he has to study. Yeah, that sounds very strange. Yeah, he has to study. He has to learn. Now, what he has to learn? He has to learn these things. He has to learn Prajna, Madhyamika, Avatamsaka, Abhidharma, Vijnanavada, Buddhist rituals, and probably, that's optional, the Ushagyuja, the Supreme Yoga, or Anu Yoga, I would say. That kind of that's in the law, yeah? No, the yoga is by myself. But that one is clear. And as we have mentioned yesterday, again, there is this great deal of symmetry between what the law says and what we actually find among the Buddhist collections in Karahoto, yeah? So here we go. If we would like to look a little bit further into that and try to trace the origins of these things, of course, again, this is a little bit arbitrary, yeah, because this division here is basically a division of Dazanjing, yeah, of the great collection of the sutras. Of course, there is no sections for Maharatnakuta, for Baoji, there is no section for Nirvana, no sections for others, but nonetheless, yeah, Prajna Paramita, Madhyamika, Avatamsaka, they're all here, yeah. So this is kind of reflexive of the, at least of an idea of the Tangut Tripitaka. If we look a little bit further, we'll kind of, again, we can see that the texts of basically the sutras, yeah, of Prajna Paramita class, they are more or less based, for the most part, on the translations from Chinese, which are in turn, the Kumarajiva's translations originally, and some explanatory treatises and even ritual texts written by Kamalashila, that famous Indian and Tibetan master, and Jayananda. Oh, I don't know. That's too bad. It's going to be born as a crocodile. Can have Jayananda's name here. And Jayananda, who is the first, very famous, first Tangut imperial preceptor. If we look a little bit further down, Madhyamika, which is basically a scholarly tradition, we see the works of Atisha, extremely popular here, and again explanatory treatises by Kamalashila, some of those. This is again because Atisha's stuff, Atisha's things in Tangut, we have more or less read them, not all, but quite a lot. As for the Kamalashila's texts, or at least the text where Kamalashila's name emerges, those are, when I look at those, I'm kind of scared, because those are scrolls like that wide, like 6-7 meters, little signs, sometimes also the cursive writing. Hopefully there will be a student one day, probably under my guidance. All right, so, but nonetheless, when we go down to the Semitic part, then again we see it's basically in the majority, that's Avatamsaka tradition, this is again very, very interesting, and if we have time, can I talk a little bit more about that. Now the major representatives here, translating to Tangut, or influencing Tangut native composition, Changguan and Zunmi, basically the fourth and the fifth patriarchs of the Avatamsaka school in China, and Zixuan, and also Chanxian, but Zixuan mostly, the masters of the revived Huayan tradition of the Northern Song. They're all here. Their works are identifiable. The so-called 100 dharmas, the Abhidharma, this is kind of really complicated, because on the one hand we have Tangut translations of Xuanzang's works, which kind of dwell into the 100 dharmas category. On the other hand, we have a huge collection of the texts, fragmented unfortunately, of the texts which belong to the so-called second coming of Abhidharma and Vijnanavada in Semitic Buddhism. The tradition which was unrelated to Xuanzang, and probably of the Khitan origin in the Liao. So the texts are all traceable to the Chinese, but the problem is that we were not able to identify the sources. So probably these are, the Chinese versions are not extant anymore. And those are probably Liao, because we know that Liao was very much concerned with the issues of Abhidharma and also Vijnanavada. For Vijnanavada we have, in terms of Chinese, Semitic, we have Yogacharya Bhumi, Yudhya Shidilun. Probably there wasn't a complete text, but only parts of it survive. But most of that is Tibetan. Not much, but most of that is Tibetan. And the so-called Buddhist rituals, those again, they are both Semitic and Tibetan. Now we have Jetari, which is very closely related to Atisha here. It's basically one system, Peishu, who is related to Zunmi and Zhongguan. So again, we can see both horizontal and vertical. So it's again quite a symmetric system. And this was also just a little bit yesterday. I just mentioned a couple of those. Those are the genres. That's basically Tibetan. Those are sort of connected with Buddhist art. All those. Vidya, Sadhana, Jukta, Sadhana, Gomta, total transmission of Padesha Manga and Jukta, the expositions of teachings. Why I put this in is that we can see congruence here again. The matters are such is that on the one hand we have a direct reflection the stipulations of the Tangut law code are directly reflected in the textual heritage of Tangut Buddhism which we have. On the other hand, when we go deviate from that mainstream, and turn to another dimension, to the texts which were imported from Tibet, then we again see a very interesting thing, because basically we have as many images as we have sadhanas. Basically, the most part, Vajravarahi, Avalokiteshvara, Chakrasamvara, Vajra of Pure Land, and we've got the same images, they also emerge, so basically there is a direct equation here. One sadhana, one image, or there